Good morning, everyone here on the East Coast, and good afternoon to everyone, or early evening to everyone in Europe. We're back again with another live chat with me, Tricky Waters, Manish Patel, and I'm going to have this is chat number two with Tomi Nyman, who is a climate advisor and investor. We had a wonderful chat last time as we discuss many of the challenges facing our planet. And of course, as I run this thing solo, there will occasionally be a need for me to look away. So don't mind that. And I have told my dogs to, of course, be quiet during this, but of course, dogs always have their own agenda as well. So, why am I doing this, right? I've explained a couple of times. I think each time I've done a chat, I've done it differently. But in the end, it's again about sharing my network, sharing the relationships I'm building here, doing a better job of networking myself, as opposed to just looking at people's feeds or post on LinkedIn. I really want to engage with folks. I've done a poor job of that in the past, and that's definitely my number one takeaway that you should get out of this experience, if nothing else. Um, and of course, in introducing some of my colleagues, some of my network, I hope you get some useful information out of what we discuss. I'm fortunate enough to have folks like Tomi and a few other folks coming up down the line who are going to share their personal, professional experiences in a variety of fields, whether it's discussing climate, as we will today, discussing entrepreneurship, working on nonprofit boards, as one of my future guests will, and also being an inventor and an innovator in the space of growing food. So we've got a wide variety of topics that are going to be covered over the next several months. But without further delay, I want to get Tomi on. Going to get him to introduce himself for anyone who's new to this chat. We did one about 2 weeks ago, and our topic was at that time the water crisis that we face. Most people don't know we face it. And an alarming fact that Tomi brought to my attention, and a lot of people seem to get a lot of people's attention, was that a city like Barcelona of 5 million people has to rely on desalination for their water supply. Imagine that, 5 million people. And I would say in the last 3 weeks, I know two groups of people who went there as tourists and probably didn't even know that that was happening right under their feet or in their glass of water. So today, I'm sure there'll be some new topics that we discuss along with the overriding topic, which Tomi will explain. It's called degrowth. So again, without further delay, let me bring Tomi on board here so we can start this discussion. Feel free to enter questions into the chat. Since this is a solo one-man band operation, I will try to get to your questions, so please do enter them. At the very least, we'll answer them offline afterwards, but we look forward to this being an interactive experience as much as possible. So there we are. Tomi, how are you? Good afternoon.
All good, all good. Thanks, Manish, for the introduction. It's good to be back.
Thank you for coming back. Like I said, I'm just starting this out. It's a trial on my part as far as what I get out of it. I don't know. Although what I'm getting out of it for sure is meeting wonderful people like you, and I appreciate you taking a chance and coming on here because you've got a lot of important information to share. We've got over 7 point something billion people on our planet. Probably only a few 100 million or tens of millions have access to the information or awareness of the type of information you're going to share. So it's really up to us, right? The small group or subset of the human population to share this knowledge so that we can take action on many of the topics that you're going to talk about. So if you could, just because there might be some new folks watching today, give us just a brief intro again of your very cool background as a climate, I like to say advisor, and also investor, as opposed to climate activist. That's a common phrase, but climate advisor and investor. those two things normally don't go together. And I think that's one of the more unique aspects of your background. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into our topic.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, basically I've got about 20 plus years background in plastics and chemicals business. Graduated from the university as master's in chemical engineering. And then my entire career has been business related, but I've always been close to chemistry in doing so. First 10 years in sales, then developing new business for bioplastics and biochemicals at a company called Neste, initiating also a chemical recycling program, which led to several multinational plastics producers eventually becoming interested in the topic, and are now offering both bio-based and recycled materials in their portfolios. Then I was working for a couple of years in management consulting, and there developed a concept plastics to bio, which we will touch base later, and then eventually became a fully entrepreneur. Because I wanted to do things on my own to help several different companies flourish with the background knowledge that I have. Today, I'm an investor. I have invested into altogether by now something like 10 to 11 startups, all of them in the climate sector, circular economy, bioeconomy, efficiency-related topics. And when it comes to today's topic about degrowth, I have unconsciously been working with degrowth for more than 10 years. So it's interesting that I actually started to look into it only a few years back.
Well, whenever someone hears the prefix D, it means reduce, right? And so even last time in our last session about water, I wanted to make very clear that we are here on LinkedIn, which is a business networking site. There's a lot of discussion about business and business growth and capitalism, of course. And so there is a way to do commerce, to do capitalism, but do it responsibly and with compassion, not just for our fellow man, but in this particular case, our planet. And of course, since I love my dogs, also our pets. But more, that's why we really need to get the message out, because there's a lot of resistance, right, in industry about a subject that starts with the prefix D. Because it means decline or slowdown or reduction. And in reality, it means new opportunities, right?
Exactly.
So why don't you, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put up quickly a rough outline of what we're going to talk about. So Tomi's going to talk about the background of what degrowth is, and then get into this really cool topic of circular bio-based plastics and chemicals, and possibly some of his endeavors investment-wise or advisement-wise. Systemic solutions, industrializing degrowth. So again, this all means we have to do things. We may have to make things or adjust how we make things. The electrification to reduce burning, right, of fossil fuels. And of course, insulation is an interesting topic Tomi brought up when we first met. Again, something that is an opportunity for business. Just different. So we all have to shift. There's going to be a lot of paradigm shifts that have to occur very rapidly. And then again, we're going to get down to the personal level and talk about, okay, we've got all these global issues and global solutions that are being worked. What can we do personally, right, as an individual to contribute to this circular economy? And how do we take the very old terminology of reuse and recycle? Tomi's got an expert on repair as well in terms of personal responsibility. I need to learn a few things from him, and hopefully you pick up some stuff too. So let's get started with just a background of what is degrowth to you.
Yeah, before going to that, I would actually give a bit of an example. Let's assume a big country that is rich in resources. that country decides to invest heavily into its own raw materials and resources and make sure that they are used as efficiently as possible. So they build absolutely perfect circularity. They decide that every item that is produced has to be reused several times before it's recycled and eventually used up for energy. Now, those people will realize that they will be able to live with less. They will be able to use the same item for several years or decades even, and they don't need to buy new stuff. Now, what happens with that country is that eventually the only thing that's left in the entire country's balance sheet is exports. That country will become extremely rich because they don't need to import anything. They are self-sufficient. Now, if you're not that country, you are in the risk of being bought by the first country that has developed this extreme efficiency, because they're able to buy others out from the market. Now, in my own life, I've been working on that in practice. I have reduced my consumption in various many ways to the minimum. We don't throw away food. We have a family of 4, and our total mixed waste per year is about 10 kilograms. We recycle, we sort everything, we repair stuff, etc., to make sure that we don't waste money, because everything that we throw into the bin is wasted money. Now, you don't want to be the last one investing into degrowth because of this opportunity that your neighbor starts to buy you out. Degrowth is simply, it is the planned reduction in material and energy consumption, but it has to be done in a systemic way.
So when we talk about, so you already got into a little bit of the personal aspect of how you're handling degrowth, right? And then comparing it to the nation state version of it. So what can we do? I mean, what is some of what you're doing, and how does it tie into, say, the next topic, which is about the recycling of plastic or conversion of plastic in a circular economy? Because clearly you are reducing, you gave us a 10 kilogram figure for how much let's say non-recyclable, I guess, waste that your family of 4 produces, which is quite remarkable, and can shame a lot of people in terms of, wow, we have a long way to go. It's a tough thing to accomplish what you're doing, but I think you've got a roadmap in place, and so maybe it's a good time for us to get into our next topic, which is the plastics to bio concept, which is of course part of the recycling aspect of what we have to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A few years back, I was working at AFRY, a global management consulting company and engineering company, and I started to think about what I had actually been doing for several years, combining the bio-based feedstock and the circular aspect of the plastics business. And I came to the conclusion that there is simply not enough biomass in the world to change all the fossil plastics to bio-based in a sustainable manner. So how on earth are we going to change from fossils to bio-based plastics? Basically, the concept explains that by building efficient collection, sorting, recycling of plastics, and then incorporating 10% of bio-based feedstock every year into that system, gradually the bio-based feedstock becomes or starts to accumulate, because every year you lose a part of the total plastics as energy. But then when you replace that with bio-based plastics, biomass, basically, it accumulates. And in about 10 years' time, by 15 years latest, most of the plastics are bio-based. The concept explains how the annual investments into doing that, is about $50 billion. That sounds like a lot, but the petrochemical industry is today investing 25 billion every year, and nevertheless into linear construction of plastic production sites. Now, just by doubling that, we can achieve full circularity and bio-based in a period of, say, 10 to 15 years.
So let me ask you this. Of course, when it comes to asking businesses to invest, right? Certainly we can push our governments to invest, but that is typically frowned upon by the private sector, right? Less government intervention or control. So how do we take this 50 billion, this $25 billion delta between what they invest today in linear fossil production or plastic production, and then ask them to invest double that money? What is the return? What is the kind of anticipated return that they can expect? Because it seems like pulling at the heartstrings or my hoodie strings hasn't been enough to compel people to change what we do to save the planet. There always has to be the main benefit seems to always have to be the bottom line, top line and bottom line. So how do we really accomplish both by doing what you're suggesting, which seems really not too complicated? There are a lot of companies with many solutions. You may have a few in your portfolio that already are working on this. I think, I still, like I said, I'm fascinated by the plastic that's made from lumber cellulose. But there's so many solutions out there to do that. How do we compel people or corporations or governments to do this faster and at a larger scale?
Yeah, so basically, instead of investing 25 billion a year into linear economy, invest 50 billion into building the circularity and the bio-based. Now, where does that money come from? Those companies invest every year approximately 300 billion into fossil feedstock, just to produce the plastic itself. In addition, a smaller quantity is invested into energy in terms of other fuels used to run those plants. Now, it does require foreseeing the future, because once you have carried out this investment period of 10 years, you will no longer spend 300 billion into feedstock, because the only feedstock you are actually buying is the recycled feedstock, which currently is almost free, and the bio-based feedstock, which is only 10% of your feedstock demand. So your feedstock costs drop dramatically. The payback time is actually pretty fast when you think of it. You spend 500 during 10 years, you spend 500 billion, but gradually you start to save 300 billion every year.
So I'm gonna, from that report that you had sent me, one of the alarming slides, if it's okay to share this,
sure.
is this one right here, which is really encapsulating everything that you need to know about our dependence on plastic and how much it's growing and will grow by 2050. Is this, if we are to take action, how much of an impact can we make on this, going from 400 to what it says, 1 billion, I guess, or more, in terms of the amount of plastic we use?
Yeah, just by recycling, we will not reduce to eventually reduce back to 400 million. I believe that recycling can have an impact, but eventually the combination of reuse and recycling will help the most. So if we, for example, think about today, about 50% of the plastics that is produced, 200 million tons, is single-use materials. We buy something packed into plastic and we throw it away. Now, what if that packaging was reusable? The plastics business market value is about 660 billion dollars. Half of that being single-use materials. If we convert that into reuse, we have a market of, let's say, easily 150 billion in reusable packaging, which is only used twice in that example. That's also an interesting opportunity that many people don't see, that reusable packaging or reusable items like that can actually have a massive market opportunity.
And another thing is you talk about reusing. Recently, I shouldn't say recent, probably about 3 years ago or less, my state of New Jersey implemented the elimination of single-use plastic bags at the supermarket when you go shopping. So they implemented a policy where you have to use a reusable bag. It can be made of a variety of materials, but it has to be durable enough that you bring it back every time you go to the supermarket. Invariably, a report came out maybe a month ago. Now I have to look at the background of the report because it criticizes this policy, because it says, well, we got rid of these plastic bags, single-use plastic bags, but instead we ended up with piles and piles of reusable bags. Well, I think that is just a cultural shift and requires the proper discipline to make sure you don't do what I do, which is you forget your reusable bag at home and then you end up having to get another one. So you end up with 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 of them, or 10 or a dozen.
Yeah, exactly.
And so these are the types of things that we have to combat, right? Is the public perception that, oh, this measure that was supposed to help is actually not helping, when in fact we've only done it for about 2 years, I guess, if I'm going to be more precise. And I think it takes a little longer for something like that, or policy like that, to effectively show itself, just as so many other policies have done with air pollution or clean water. They are not overnight actions in terms of how they act. There is no, as we always say, no silver bullet to solve any problem in its entirety. So the things you're suggesting, I think, to get back to that 400 million, which is really, I mean, it's bad enough, right? At 400 million. I mean, we were not in great shape with 400 million.
No.
So we need to at least stabilize that globally, as, developing countries especially are, going to be consuming more and more plastic. We have to rely on nations like India and a lot of the Southeast Asian nations to work with us, the African nations, possibly Eastern Europe. I'm not sure how bad the problem is there, but it's going to take an all of the above solution in terms of the countries and the people that participate. So
it's about convenience.
So let's continue on degrowth. You mentioned a phrase, the industrializing of degrowth, and what does that mean? Industrializing degrowth. I think that means something good for capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there are a lot of people talking about degrowth, but most of those discussions are either politically driven, which they shouldn't be, or driven by the absolute need to just reduce consumption without actually giving proper solutions to do so. And in order to work towards a sustainable economy and production, we need to think of degrowth as an industry. We need to think of all those different types of businesses that today are small, but can decouple us from those unsustainable alternatives. If we have a big company, they could be totally destroyed by a small company that offers a far more sustainable but smaller solution. It has happened before, and it will happen in the future. And this is what I mean by degrowth. If you don't industrialize it yourself, someone else will scale it up and eat up your business. That's why it's worthwhile to really work in it everywhere in the world.
So there are two really interesting charts that you sent to me. One is about food.
Yep.
We all talk about food and the consumption of meat and how that affects the climate. The other one you sent me is on fashion. And for some reason, while I have no expertise or knowledge of the fashion industry, it's become very interesting to me because I'm actually going to be launching a venture in the apparel space this year, and of course want to be responsible and sustainable with the materials I use. And I'm learning from a lot of sustainable fashion and apparel companies out there, small ones, as you just said, because they can be nimble, they can act responsibly, and typically they're not reporting to the stock market, which has a huge
Yeah.
impact
Yeah.
on decisions, right? Strategic decisions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to bring up your slide on fashion specifically, and how can that industry transform, still remain in business, but who is it at a different scale? Is that a hard truth that we must start facing in this degrowth process? Is that it's possible that the market for brand new items is reduced because we have to look at alternate approaches, whether it's recycling or reusing?
Yeah, I mean, the way we are running the fashion business today is absolutely unsustainable. It's fast fashion. People are ordering new clothes from the other side of the world by airplane so that they can have a new shirt and wear that for 1 or 2 days and then buy the next one. That is not, uh, that is something that really has to change. Now, what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of companies popping up selling secondhand fashion altogether. There are more and more people talking about repair. I repair my own clothes as well, as an example, both socks, jeans, shirts, whatever. If I cannot repair, I take them to be repaired. Uh, a lot of textile waste is ending up, for example, in Africa, just being piled up or burnt because people just have used them for very little time. Now, I foresee that we will either be forming in the world a parallel organization of secondhand stores, or the brand owners themselves will start to sell as regular items in their existing stores the secondhand clothes. One
I did.
interesting thing,
I'm sorry. Continue.
yeah. One interesting thing that came up quite recently was that uh, when you buy a new piece of clothes, it is typically treated with a number of forever chemicals. Most people don't even wash it before using it. They put those forever chemicals onto their skin, they're absorbed into their blood, and they will stay there forever. Now, when you buy a secondhand cloth, it has been washed, and those chemicals are not toxicating you in the same way anymore. So it is actually safer to buy secondhand than than first-hand clothes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I saw recently where I believe Levi's and Company had a secondhand store of their own
Yeah,
brand. But unfortunately, I don't know the background of why, but it was shuttered, which is discouraging because here is a very famous uh, trend-setting brand that can make a market or shake a market potentially with the right move, that seem to be taking a step in the secondhand market, and for whatever reason, whether it was not profitable enough, or as we've heard in the past, right, forever, that secondhand markets dilute the first-hand market. And so, of course, that's a tough thing for corporations to accept. when they have to answer to boards and shareholders. So that has to be something that I think must be driven by the consumer, that says like I want to, I want to be responsible.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, and that's why I'm kind of entering the space later this year, smaller brands and smaller businesses can have a role to play to change the way larger businesses operate, or at least we need to do that. So that's fashion, and then I want to quickly touch on food, if that's okay,
Yeah, sure.
which is the other topic that you sent. And what is this kind of telling us the paradigm shift needs to be? Some of which we have, probably a lot of the audience has heard, some of which we have not.
Yeah. So basically, if we think about the impact of meat and dairy altogether on agricultural land, 77% of the agricultural land is consumed by the meat and dairy production. Additionally, about 1/3 of the food is wasted by consumers already. Before on the fields, there is food waste, but altogether, a massive amount of food is wasted. Now, if we think of it the other way, and we reduce meat consumption, dairy consumption, and we reduce food waste, all of those by 45%, we are still healthy. We're going back to the same levels as like somewhere in the 70s or 80s. But the amount of land that is freed is sufficient to basically cover up all the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced by both humans and by nature itself on an annual basis. The 2.5 billion hectares of nature can be rewilded by this contribution, just by eating less meat.
Okay. And I know, everyone should mark that you said eating less, right? Not, you don't have to go completely cold on meat,
No.
because for those of us who enjoy it responsibly, as with everything, right? In moderation, it's probably good for your health as well. Not just the planet. So, as usual, we're only halfway through roughly, but I wanted to make sure we covered electrification, which is of course a very, probably the most understood topic right now, or misunderstood, whichever way you want to look at it, because there are folks who run out and bought their electric car, or wired up their house with solar panels the second they were available, the early adopters. And then there are folks who are still, as much as I believe in them as a solution, I still haven't switched over to an EV yet. I'm still waiting for some things to be addressed and answered. So if you want to touch on electrification a little bit to see where you think we are and how much further we have to go.
I think we will go pretty far. Electrification of both traffic and industry is essential for energy efficiency, for material efficiency. If we think about, take heat pumps as an example, instead of burning a liquid fuel to produce a certain amount of heat, only 1/3 of that energy is captured as heat. 1/3 is, or 1/3 can be turned into electricity. At least 1/3 is lost into the environment. Then if we produce that with direct electricity, instead of using 3 units of fuel, we are using 1 unit of electricity to provide the same heat. Correct? Now, if we then use a heat pump, what happens is that heat pump captures heat from the outside air, brings that inside, and the power that the heat pump needs is only 1/3 of the electrical heater. In the end, the heat pump is about 10 times more efficient than burning a fuel to heat up your home.
Have some of the, to play devil's advocate here, have some of the limitations of heat pumps been addressed in terms of, like, it's kind of been known that heat pumps are best in certain climates or certain environments. Have they improved in performance that They can be used just about anywhere in extremely cold or extremely hot environments, or they still need to be very carefully selected.
Yeah, basically, it depends on the heat pumps. Not all heat pumps are available everywhere. But living here in Finland, we've been using a heat pump at home for the last 20 years, and our winters are minus 20 plus. So there is no restrictions in that perspective. In the cold weather, you can also use a heat pump. It's not as efficient as, say, in 0 degrees, but it still applies and it's still workable. So that has been solved. But in the past, they used to call them Nordic inverters here in Finland, just to make sure that you have the right type of heat pump.
Okay, okay. All right. That's excellent to know, because I know that in some countries there's actual legislation either in place or being put in place to make this transition happen, and happen really fast,
Yeah,
especially on new construction. And there are certain things happening even in the US that are at least recommending transition from gas stoves to electric stoves. Has some restaurants that seem to function traditionally off of gas a little bit, upset. But in the end, as you said, I mean, if we don't do our small part, our bit part in all of this, it's very hard for us to imagine or envision solving this challenge that faces us. So, and the last kind of specific topic was something that you covered with me, which is really a business opportunity, and that is in the insulation space,
yeah, yeah.
simple home insulation space. What is the opportunity there, that is also degrowth?
Yeah, if we think about how the world operates, we have about 8 billion people. Only about 1 billion live and work in buildings that are insulated. The rest are living in hotter climates, in buildings that have no insulation, and most likely, in many cases, they are using air conditioning to cool down the rooms. Now, that electricity is often produced by burning a fuel. So you're burning a fuel to provide yourself cooling. Does it make sense? No, not really. So instead, the alternative would be to insulate, to paint the houses white, so that they deflect heat, and in that way provide a large part of the cooling. And then the amount of power needed for the air conditioner is much lower compared to running it all the time when you don't have the insulation. So this is a very good example where by adding a little bit of insulation around the house, you reduce the amount of power you need and the amount of material you need to burn to produce the power. And you're actually producing heat to produce cold, which doesn't make any sense. And that
It
leads
all
to
make
a degrowth in
Yeah,
material.
it all makes sense. Actually, one of the client partners I have is in the space of phase changing materials, and this is all what you're describing is also maintenance free, and they have an advanced, smart, engineered advanced material that can be put into buildings, and building owners have seen reductions of energy consumption, HVAC energy consumption, by like 35%,
Yeah,
which is obviously quite significant. But again, it does require investment, of course. Investment is good. But that investment also should produce an ROI, and I believe that's also happening. So what you're describing about insulation is a perfect case of very simple step, and something that we can all personally do. As our
yeah.
electric
Thanks
company
to
always tells us to check our
yeah,
windows, check our doors for leaks, and then of course insulate appropriately.
that's right. Thanks to insulation, heat pumps, and solar panels, we don't pay for electricity for 5 months a year.
Okay. Okay. And that
So
that
that's
has been one of the six. I've not heard much negative about solar panels. And now in the US, I think most homes in my area have had them for at least almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
A lot more in the recent 5 years, but probably between 5 and 10 years. I've never seen anyone remove them from their home. Once
Yeah.
they're there, you can't get rid of them. And all people do is just brag about how much money they're saving or how much of a check they get from their utility company every year
Exactly.
for contributing to the grid. So I think that covers our main topics, and we actually in there did talk about the personal steps we can take um, regarding degrowth, and I guess it's really tied to the circular economy. A truly circular economy means that things are recycled, repaired, and reused at a much more efficient level, right? I think well, as we are on LinkedIn, right, there's a lot of discussions of tools for worker productivity and technology implementation to make us all more efficient workers. I think we've reached a point where we're pretty efficient as far as workers go. What we need to do is be more efficient in our practices in recycling and reusing and repairing things. And is there anything you're involved with at a larger scale? Obviously, personally, you do it. Is there anything you can share with our community that's happening at a larger scale, addressing, issue, like I love the idea of repair. I'm not good at it, but I want to learn more about it.
Yeah, when it comes to the companies I invested into, there I'm working in recycling as well, in various materials, plastics, ceramics, etc. So in there it is happening. But I think the key thing about degrowth and why I emphasize using the word degrowth is that if you avoid the use of the word degrowth, you're not thinking about the systemic change. You're only thinking that a small tweak in efficiency is enough, when what you actually should think about is how to think differently, how to think about what you actually need about the concept altogether, and how to deliver that in a more sustainable way. And it can be completely different to your current way of operating.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's again, these are all paradigm shifts that one way or another, either we're going to do on our own, or Mother Nature is going to compel us to do it
Yeah,
because we've run out of time, and we're very quickly approaching that in terms of how much time we have. As many have asked, and as I said last time, when was the right time we should have taken action on climate change? It was probably 1982. And so here we are with a great delay in taking action. There's a lot of interest in it, but I know I have to personally make a lot of changes and improvements. I'm trying and starting, and I know it's not easy all the time. But if the collective of us does it, we stand a chance at reversing some of the damaging effects of climate change. Tomi, thanks again. I don't know if you had any parting comments on this particular topic before we wrap up.
oh, nothing specific. Don't try to become perfect from day one, but just start.
Well, I
Start
think that's
tracing.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
If anyone wants to learn more about Tomi or his investments, companies that he's involved with, Tomi, it's november.fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's november.fi. You can read more about Tomi, his positions, and his projects and his mission to help reduce our CO2 emissions, our greenhouse gas emissions, by 1 gigaton. And that's a noble goal. And he has a plan to do it, actually. And that's why I'm excited that we're going to do a third chat on March 20th. There'll be a little spring break in the middle here in the US, so that's why a little bit of a delay. But please be on the lookout on LinkedIn. This episode will be available on LinkedIn as well as YouTube for as long as they are in business. And you can rewatch it. Of course, there's a lot of facts and figures that Tomi threw out there. I rewatch it just to recapture some of those things because they're important to this entire case that we're talking about of climate change. So Thank you, everyone who was able to join. I don't think we got any questions. We did get a greeting from Italy from the river cleaning project. I'm not sure if that's someone you're involved with, but Vani from Italy gave us a quick hello. Thank you so much for joining. We look forward to seeing you again on the next one. Tomi, thank you again. Have a great evening, and we'll look forward to our next chat.
Likewise, Manish. Thank you very much.
See
Thanks
you.
to the audience. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.